Hi, we are the Flexible Philosophy Podcast.
Power dynamics can happen anywhere. For example, religion, therapy, friendships, cults, and any other relationships.
Like corporate America.
Also, corporate America. We can never use this.
Okay. Okay, this is us practicing our monologues for if our videos are ever by ourselves, making YouTube videos and stuff like that. So, do you have enough oxygen out in the outer space?
I can't figure out how to change the background now that I changed it to this. And so this is just me forever now in
Okay,
outer space.
I like it.
What do you want to talk about randomly? You just mentioned power dynamics.
Yes. All right. So, power dynamics. You being a marriage and family therapist, I feel like this is another thing that's in your wheelhouse with like all of the system stuff. And like, my understanding of marriage and family therapy is we view all these connections and relationships as like a spider web. It's like in my
Yes.
family of three, it's like how I relate to my husband, how he relates to me, how he relates to my daughter, how my daughter relates to him, how she relates to me, and how I relate to her. It's like, it's all, there's a lot happening.
Yeah.
Then, if you add another person into the mix, then you have like, it's just like fourfold of
Yeah.
like all those interactions going in all the different ways.
Valid. I mean,
Yeah.
complex systems and people are in themselves so complicated. And then you add another human to the dial to the element, and then it's like exponentially more complicated.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree.
so how like would you conceptualize a systemic view of a power dynamic or a power struggle?
Who, see, you put me on the spot. I'll have to edit a little thinking time out of this, but um, well, I'm trying to think of a good example. So, in an example where, let's say the children are fighting on at the dinner table. Let's say what you see with your eyes is the kids, like one kid smarting off to another sibling, and you could just be looking at that one from one plane. But if mom and dad are both sitting at the table and you look at the comments that dad has just made, he's been in a bad mood. He has a really like his posture is all crumpled up and mad and angry. And mom looks really anxious and stressed, and she keeps asking question, 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 and she's coming in. So you have that playing out. And so, in a complex system, you would say that the kids having their argument is a symptom of the system as a whole. So,
Mm.
it's not just about the kids have sort of like out of the blue had a fight. You could maybe analyze that their energy and how they're feeling like they need to distract from mom and dad or whatever is the reason why they're having that fight, not about the fight
Mm.
itself or even about them. It's about them responding in the system.
Okay. So I'm kind of transferring that concept to a workplace where a lot of people are afraid that they're going to get laid off. And it's just kind of like, who's next on the
Like in the
chopping block,
office.
basically. Yeah.
Okay. If the branch is going to get shut down.
So brave of the writers of The Office. Season one, episode one is the branch is closing. And
Is
then, yeah, Dan tells
Oh,
Michael that season one, episode one, right away. And then it lasts for 9 years. I'm like, how brave of those writers to start with the end. Like,
yep.
yeah. And that was just like really indicative of the economy at the time because there was a lot of insecurity. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, so I'm thinking about in a workplace, people are like, who's next, basically. And that like scariness or the insecurity of their system at play is going to affect peer-to-peer interactions. It's going to affect how they work together as a team, potential betrayals and stuff like that, just because people like start to scramble to make themselves get to the top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's power dynamic. Uh-huh.
I completely agree.
So in a church, like if we're talking about adding complexity of like, just adding one more member to the family and it increases by like fourfold basically. When you have a group of 100 people or 200 people, and then they're broken up into these, what are they called? Life groups.
Or small groups.
Small groups, yeah. Then they're broken up. That adds complexity to this spider web of the whole community, you know? There's different alliances, there's different, threads on that spider web that would get strained because of certain push and pull from different sides.
Yeah.
So if the if the dynamics between two people is just a microcosm of what's happening in the larger picture, what if you have a church with like really dogmatic and abusive leadership? How would that transfer into a smaller relationship of just like peers or like a leader to sheep? They were called sheep in my circles, but how would those microcosms play out based upon the larger picture of how people are feeling in general? Or if the message of that church is one of a lot of fear and stuff like that, how does that transfer into individual relationships?
Yeah. Well, that's what Marlene Winell says that high control religion boils down to, or two messages. You're not good and you're not safe.
Hmm.
And if you think of like, if you, this would be a fun project.
What?
This is project would bring me so much joy. Um, to take a sermon series or take like a year of sermons from a church and have AI evaluate how many of the statements in the sermons are fear-based statements or
Hmm.
shame-based statements, how many
Mm-hmm.
of the messages. But anyway, but you're saying if there's a lot of we're not safe messaging because of the complexity of dynamics, then the people in the small group are going to react differently than they would if the messaging was like, everyone is safe, there's nothing to fear.
Yeah.
You would see that.
Yeah. Well, if messages were more positive and stuff like that, I feel like people get to the point where they're like, all right, I got what I needed from that experience and now I can move on. Like that's what we look for in therapy. Therapy is not designed for people to be in it their whole lives or to be with the same therapist forever or anything. You end up
Yeah.
getting to a point where it's like, yeah, I think I've reached my goals. I'm good. And, I'll contact you when needed. And as a therapist, it's so bittersweet for that to happen. But it also shows that there is progress and, the person got what they needed and stuff.
Yeah.
So, that grief is ours to hold, kind of like the bittersweet of them graduating, but it's not the best business model for
It's not a
someone.
good church model either.
Well, church is a business in many regards.
I know, but I agree there's an overlap because if you are always telling someone they're broken in therapy, oh, you're broken, you got this problem and you need me to fix it, then you're going to
Mm,
come to me over and over and I'll have that security. That
yeah,
could be the church or the therapist.
right.
You're saying you're broken, but if you come to me and get treatment, I can help you heal, but only I can help you heal. And apart
Yeah,
from me helping you heal, you're going to continue to be broken. That's the same thing we were talking about high control groups, is they're
yeah,
always going to say, you can only get what you need with me. And if you, I can fix you, but the terms and conditions are I can fix you, but you can never leave me.
right, right. Yeah. Like as a therapist, there's many times where I say, ooh, someone's not going to need therapy anymore soon, And it's just my way of noticing someone's progress, like totally not getting rid of you. Like, don't worry, this isn't me trying to push you away,
Yeah.
but you're doing so well. You're using your tools, you're reaching your goals. Like, wow, you're going to be graduating soon.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it would be really abusive and inappropriate to say, yeah, see, there's still a lot for you to work on. Make sure you never miss a session. Why would I say that? The only person benefiting from that is myself because I continue to retain their business. So manipulative.
But I think that that happens in our industry and
Mm,
in churches where the people get convinced that they are the authority figure and they do that the client does need them.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I think there's some therapists that really do believe that that client needs to stay with them to get what they need to function, which is like so problematic.
That's narcissistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me to get into my master's, we had to do this like really in-depth personality inventory. And it showed who you are on paper, black and white. It said how many times you likely lied on the test. It said how many times you likely acted like things are better than they actually are, acted like things are worse than they actually are. And yeah, it was just really interesting to see different results. Or like, ideally you would be able to weed out narcissistic therapists, but you can't. I mean, they do exist in the industry, or just as narcissistic pastors exist in churches, and they're more likely to keep people roped in.
Do you think that you would veer towards, okay, personality checking?
Mhm.
So I guess the opposite extreme would just be to tell someone like, I don't know anything. I don't even know why you're here. This is probably a waste of your time. Like I'm useless. Um, so do you think you lean towards like do you think you're right through the middle or do you think you lean one way or the other?
Um, I think I tend to be like a romantic optimist, and I see the good in people. And like when I meet with someone the first time, I have a box on my paperwork that says progress. And I always take time to ask what progress they've already made, because I think it empowers them to, like, I don't want my clients to need me so bad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be their only support. Throughout the whole process, I'm always nudging them outwards to, find connection elsewhere, to find things that work elsewhere that's not in therapy. Because like it's
Yeah.
1 hour a week or 1 hour every 2 weeks. It's ridiculous to think that you play such a big role in people's lives. So I tend more, not that like I don't know what's wrong with you, I don't know why you're here, but I'm like, I tend more towards like you are more resourced than you think you are, and you're more capable than other people might make it seem. I just really don't want someone to feel roped in or trapped in a therapy process.
It sounds like they wouldn't the way you describe it.
I hope not.
I work really hard on that too.
And I tell them a day's coming where you're going to say, I think I'm good. And
Yeah.
it's going to be good. We can look for that moment. We can look for glimpses of it.
Yep.
Yeah. But uh, I guess you have to have like some sort of security, and like not be like super thirsty for clients or super thirsty for income to be able to be like that.
I know.
Yeah. So,
Do you have a lot of self-confidence in this job? Like, to answer my own question, like, it is hard, like the imposter syndrome, I guess, is the other side of that, that you think you have nothing to offer. But so people need you to have a certain amount of like regulation and intellectual like groundedness in what you're doing, but then not too much. So, but you see how fine-tuned it is? Like,
yeah, it is. They say it's a dance.
it is a dance because you're trying to offer just the right amount of not 100 mLs, not 0 mLs, but like 50 mLs of a power dynamic. Okay, this is what we got started of what therapy is a power dynamic. Like you do need some sort of sense of yourself. And that's not a bad power dynamic to show up. I think people can sense that like I can trust her because she has a degree of competence in what she's doing,
Mhm.
but not too much so that you're not depending on the client either. You got to trust yourself that if that client leaves, that other clients will come,
Right, right. Yeah.
even with all of the insurance drama.
With the dance though,
Yeah.
I think it's really hard because one client may really need the 50 mLs, but another client might need 80 and like resonate more with a certain approach.
Yep.
Or some clients, they only feel comfortable if it's super lax and flexive, whereas other clients are like, tell me what to do.
Yes.
So you can't say the same thing to all the clients and end up with the same outcome. There's
Yep.
so many variables involving humans, or how you said, like your inner world is so complex. We are encountering an inner world. So one part of someone could have a certain affinity towards us, whereas another part of someone could have hatred towards us, or another part of them feels shame when we're around them. And
Yeah.
you have the client just like on the outside, like smile. It's so complex once you're aware of all of these dynamics and things. But I'm always just I don't like to be controlled, and I definitely don't want to control someone else. There's no financial gain to me that is worth being narcissistic or manipulative or controlling in some sort of therapy relationship.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to be a person who over controls other people to me.
Yeah.
But if I have a default, and this is like taking me into personal life, not professional life, my default in my personal life is to allow myself to be controlled or influenced by some perceived authority figure for better or for worse. I mean, I've
Hmm.
obviously grown through that. But like, okay, you gave me the example of like every client is different and maybe someone comes to therapy and they need 15 mLs.
Yes.
Okay. But in a high control religion, if you have, like, if I'm the kind of person and I was vulnerable and young in high control religion, so a high control religion sees that and eats that up. If you're the person that um, is willing to give yourself over or you're thinking over, then the high control religion will continue to give you every answer, every solution, and put itself in a place of supreme authority in your life forever and ever.
There's a train. I don't
I
know if you
heard
can hear
the very first moment of it.
it.
I cannot with this filter. I've got to turn it off. It's distracting me. It's fine. Carry on. But anyway, we adjust as therapists to the MLs per se that someone needs as far as confidence and authority, but other systems do not. Other systems
Right.
will always take.
Yeah. I would say like fundamentalist, Bible based church type of deals, they have this belief of it's written there loud and clear. So that's the dose you get. They don't take into account the holistic person, their experiences, their complexity, what they've been through, what resonates with them. It's just, this is it, and this is the consequence, and that's how you need to live.
I think that's because it's written in the text that way.
Oh,
Got to do our episode on what is fundamentalism. Oh, so
okay.
many ideas. Because fundamentalism is this extreme dependency on the text. And if it's written in the Bible that you should die to yourself and be completely dependent, it's not like someone's like coming up with that idea the first time.
Yeah,
It's like
that,
a problem that's baked in.
yeah. Um, yeah, it's like, I don't know if I talked about this in our last episode, but oh yeah, I did. In the Bible, it's like if you have a conflict with someone, take a witness with you and then go talk to them. Like it's kind of written out in instructional ways, or just like, hey, this is what divorce is like. This is what's permitted. This is what's not permitted. And so if you're not taking into account the whole holistic person, you're maybe giving a dose that's inappropriate for their presenting concern.
Should shrink wrap churches, and then like on the label on the front, it would be like this church has 100 mLs of authority.
Yes.
Or like make a little muscle icon and
Yeah.
like this church has one muscle icon, meaning there's a lot of room here for you to be an individual. And then you go to like another church down the road and you're like, this church has 10 muscle icons, which means don't come in here unless you're willing to give up your identity, autonomy, and opinions forever.
Yes. Yeah. It's like on Google, you can filter out restaurants with like the $1 sign or
Yeah.
the $2 sign or the $3 signs. Like, I only want low control, chill religion. Show
Yeah.
me what's around.
Oh my gosh, I wonder if there's a neutral like questioning thing you could do to add to ascertain low control. It would be on Stephen Hassan's like
Well,
yeah.
at a church one time, we went, and it was like this week that they were announcing that the children's pastor was no longer employed there. Okay. It was very mysterious, very weird. So after the service, I decided to go up to this like head honcho, and I was like, so if someone like quits or gets let go from your guys' church, do you make them sign an NDA? And this guy was like, who are you and why? I am not popular in these spaces, I'm telling you.
Because yes, you ask
Yeah.
questions.
So, I mean, that's one question, right? Or if a church took the bite model survey of what their typical MO is, well, the people taking the survey, would they have the humility to recognize that, yes, these are issues in our place, you
Yeah.
know? Or I feel like if you were to give people the bite model in like super fundamentalist circles, they'd be like, we have been given this authority over all powers and principalities. So we have the right to exercise discipline however we want. We have the right to exercise our theological understanding however we want. There's just like so much taken out of context that adds to their own power trip, and it ends up being more narcissistic and manipulative.
How would a church answer that question and be low control? Would it be like, we believe like this is where we've come to terms in our belief, but we support and agree with other people's versions of this?
My thought, ideally, is that they would say, shoot, we've made that mistake and we need to figure out a way to correct it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But they all have their statement of faith, like, and usually written in as like, and we think we're right. I don't know how, you know what I mean? Like, how would
Well,
you have not too much flexibility that it means they don't believe in anything?
the statement of faith that you typically find is different from the interpersonal dynamics that's written on something like the bite model, though.
True.
So if a church were to say, for example, yeah, we've restricted people's communication with their families. It's rooted in this belief that we need to take care of our flock, or it's rooted in a belief that we prune the diseased branches, or it's rooted in this. However, this is listed on what's abusive. You have to sit with the cognitive dissonance of we have these beliefs, yet there's experts out there saying that this is abusive behavior for a group. How do you reconcile that? Or how do you stop the abusive behaviors and affirm a belief system or adjust it? And that's really hard. And that's just with one belief
Yeah.
that is on two different ends of the spectrum potentially. But the problem is, and I think a lot of places wouldn't take the bite model survey according to their group because of lack of humility. You have to be able to recognize I messed that up and I need to fix it. Oh, sounds like repentance. People are good at repenting in prayer, but are they able to do that for their organization and correct
Exactly.
course, do a 180? Hmm. Sounds
Ooh,
familiar.
here's a question.
Hmm.
Can you change your mind? That's
Oh, yeah.
a different version of saying repentance, but
Yeah.
can your organization change its mind? And can people within your organization, even in leadership, change their mind? And how would you handle that?
Yeah.
How, like your point to the NDA, well, sign this then and you're out of here. Or, how would you handle that is says a lot about the organization.
Yeah. So if a church was like, you know what, we have made people sign NDAs in the past, and uh, that is controlling. We're kind of correcting course on that. I think it would involve contacting those past people that had signed the NDAs or that left under hurt circumstances
Yeah.
and have a humiliating, humbling, I mean, having a humbling conversation with them of like, we've been doing some reflecting, and what happened with that whole dynamic was wrong, for better or for worse. You have the freedom to talk about what happened to you.
Yeah.
Ooh, risky for them, but less abusive at the same time.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
flexibility to be able to
Yeah.
change their rhetoric, which would be
Mm-hmm.
another marker for a muscle icon.
I'm like, dude, if you are operating with no issues, and if light can be shed on your actions and etc., why would you make someone sign an NDA that's interacted with you? Like
I cannot.
that that just shows that there's stuff to be hidden.
How many churches do you think do that when they fire someone or when something goes bad? I mean, I'm curious what percentage that is.
I would love to know.
Yeah.
It's not like they advertise it or brag about it or anything like that, but it definitely happens.
Yeah. It's like if you're going to go on a dating website You want to know like what the person's history is with their
Yeah.
other relationships. So if you're going to join an organization, it's good to know this is why gossip is good because that's the only way sometimes people have access to information like that.
Mm.
It's through
Yeah.
gossip.
Yep.
Pro gossip.
Do you feel free when you gossip nowadays?
No, I still feel bad, but I think that I'm learning still like that it's helpful.
Yeah. Sometimes.
I just don't like um there's this part in me that always wants to be ultra mature. And I feel like gossiping is not ultra mature. And then it looks down on me from within. Like I'm looking down on myself from
Hmm.
within, saying you're so immature. But I
Yeah.
don't think that part understands that it's not necessarily just immaturity. Like sometimes it's just hu being a human and like talking about another. And I'm not even talking about like people and being like a mean girl about it. It's just part of standing up for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. Or it's like, that's why tabloids thrive. People like hearing stories and kind of like, you
Oh,
know,
true.
I think there's a part of me that's a very juicy part. Like, I want the juicy
I'll
details.
have that.
Yeah. I
Tell
want the
me.
tea.
Tell me the tea.
Oh my gosh. Maybe my mature part is like, all right, just hurry up about it.
The best intention of my mature part is that the other people not be hurt. The other
Hmm.
people I'm gossiping about are still humans, and I wouldn't want them to be hurt
Hmm.
by whatever. And that's valid. And also, it's still valid, I think, that in if someone's like misbehaving or the gossip doesn't come from a place of like me seeing someone who's vulnerable and then making fun of them. It
Right. Right.
comes from a place of I see something wrong, it's like a justice thing, and I'm going
Hmm.
to poke at that or make fun of that because there's something in me that perceives like a threat from that person.
Hmm.
And that's what gossip is good for.
Okay. So, okay, this reminds me of like abstinence education, where
Okay.
it's like the only option is to abstain. Like zero sex for you, zero anything, zero experience, right? Versus parents who are like, hey, these are the risks of intimacy. These are forms of protection, like, preparation of the kid or something like that.
Yes.
You know, and then regarding gossip, it's like in certain circles, it's like zero gossip. You do not talk about anyone else. And if you're caught, blah, blah, blah. Um, versus okay, there might be some benefit to us kind of like perceiving a threat, bouncing it off of each other, seeing how genuine a person is. Like, hey, I noticed this. Like, what's your take? There's a lot of benefit to that type of conversation.
Totally.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
it's all flexible. That's the secret. Just be chill about it.
Could we just be a little less perfect about it? It's fine. Just
Are
relax.
you sure?
No, it's so
It's
hard.
like it's like Pam's grandma. Well, I wouldn't be interested in living if I believed that. Nobody's perfect.
That's so funny.
Mima.
Oh, Mima.
Aw.
We're all just trying out here. It's hard.
Yep. Well,
Hold on. I have a real quick one thing to tell everyone on this podcast.
okay.
Okay.
Listen up, all two of you.
Podcast win for all of us, guys. My son came home from eighth grade and told me that they've been reading Animal Farm
Okay.
and he had to have a turn giving a speech or something. They were doing like practicing persuasive dialogue or something. And somehow before his talking time, the teacher mentioned cult dynamics or said the word cults. And so he tells me that he stands up and says, well, just so you know, my mom is very interested in cults and she studies them all the time. And the
Oh,
class was very interested in that.
okay.
So this
This
little
was the
podcast,
eighth grade.
so our podcast has trickled into the eighth grade of a school in Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
Okay.
We're
Well,
on a
yes.
national stage.
I'm surprised in your community they're allowing them to read Animal Farm. Isn't that banned at this point?
I have no idea how that flew under the radar because the books that they can read in our schools now are like, there's like four, including the Bible, which don't even get me started on the sexuality in the Bible and violence in the Bible.
We
Please,
have an episode planned about public schools being infiltrated by the literature.
thank
So
you.
look forward to that puppy.
Can't wait. Okay, I'll wrap this up.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us on our random talk.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.